thank you all for joining us. I'm going to make brief introductory remarks and then introduce our very distinguished panel one by one. I am Joel Berg. I'm CEO of Hunger Free America. We're a nationwide anti-hunger direct service and advocacy organization. We're based in New York City, but work statewide in New York, where we are based. And the main message today from two reports we're issuing, one on pantry and kitchen usage, soup kitchen and food pantry usage in New York City and New York State, and one on a nationwide poll we did of low-income Americans. And we found that in New York City and New York State, we're facing the greatest hunger crisis really in modern times, with food insecurity ravaging rural, suburban, and urban parts of the state. Our reports prove that while food charities such as FoodLink and the West Side Campaign Against Hunger represented here are truly performing heroic work during the pandemic, they've really only been able to scratch the surface of the vast need. And it's been the huge surge in federal food assistance that's actually dwarfed the impact of charities, and is really the top reason that New York City and state have avoided mass starvation. But the situation is getting even worse, and the only way to continue to prevent mass starvation is for the U.S. Senate to pass, or to be precise, the Republican current majority in the U.S. Senate to pass, and the president to sign into law the HEROES Act, which passed the House 192 days ago. 192 days ago. In fact, we have a feature on our website, the hunger clock, ticking off every day that's passed since the Senate majority has refused to act. That act would provide a very big boost in both economic and food aid. As I said, we're also releasing today a groundbreaking poll of research that found consensus among 800 low-income Americans from rural, suburban, and urban urban areas, as well as Americans of all races and political parties, that they support a hike in the minimum wage, a guarantee of living wage jobs to all adults. I know Senator Gillibrand's been a leader on that, as well as an increase in SNAP funding, which some people still call food stamps, making quality health care and housing affordable, and eliminating these so-called wage cliffs under which people lose all their benefits as soon as they work more hours and get a raise. Also, Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Morelle here, along with Congressman McGovern and Congressman Espelot, have sponsored a bill called the HOPE Act, which would promote the use of modern technologies to ease access to government benefits and banking services and enable low-income Americans to team up with government and nonprofit agencies to expand their upward mobility. And our poll shows overwhelmingly support, people, again, of all races, all regions, for that concept. And I can say, speaking on behalf of Hunger Free America, we're greatly encouraged by the very strong commitment of the incoming Biden-Harris administration to doing something really serious about hunger and economic, racial, and food justice, all of which intertwined. And we have a series of detailed recommendations. But the first thing we hope they at least consider is creating a White House hunger and food czar position to really coordinate a comprehensive government-wide plan to advance those priorities. So that's my very brief introduction. Now I want to briefly introduce Benjamin Kupersmit, who did this poll on our behalf. Benjamin?
Thank you, Joel. So we had a survey of 807 Americans, as Joel mentioned, with incomes under $50,000 a year that was conducted online. And this is actually in addition to a survey we did last year before the pandemic among 1,000 likely voters. And what's most striking is the consistent message, and as Joel referenced, it's across regional, racial, and political lines, that people who live in poverty or near poverty have a clear message for elected officials and others. They want to see a government that actively pursues policies to raise wages if they're able to work. They want policies that are going to give them access to life's necessities, healthcare, food, shelter, to have security and thrive. And they expect a safety net to be there when, for whatever reason, this doesn't happen. And it has to be sufficient, and it needs to serve the people who are in need, to be in our focus groups, and to hear people who are struggling with the mental health and the depression that comes with these economic challenges. Just reinforces for all of us that these things have to come from a place of dignity and compassion. And that's really what's coming across in all of the work we've been doing in these surveys. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. We at Hunger Free America understand that history proves that no social movement's ever been won by one people on behalf of another. That's why we have a food action board program that empowers people with lived experience with poverty and hunger to advise us, to advise elected officials. And we're so honored that Natosha McCray, one of our food action board members from the Bronx, is here today. Natosha.
Good afternoon. I'm a mother of two. I live in the Bronx, considering that the Bronx is considered the nation's poorest communities. During the pandemic, my experience was one, having two children under the age of 17 home for 8 months, losing the ability to work during the pandemic with the at-home state order. Some of the things that we had experienced was the extremely long lines through pantry lines, also the inability and flexibility of being able to order online using EBT. And also the price surges for food in our local neighborhood stores, especially when it came to meat products, cheese, milk, eggs, bread. The surge was more than 30% for our local supermarkets that they said it was just based on demand. Those prices did not go down. We're still experiencing those increases. My work was affected by the stay-at-home order. The amount that we get for SNAP benefit helped our family, but with the children being home for the 8 months, it only helped but so much. I think one of the things working with Hunger Free America that I've been working with for over 10 years is that the commitment to end hunger, especially for families like mine. And some of the things that I believe are very important to this process is increasing SNAP benefits for all families, increasing the federal minimum wage, and also creating a one-step application, especially for people who are provided with multiple benefits. If you have WIC, you have SNAP benefits, you need healthcare, you shouldn't have to run through multiple organizations and have to go from submitting the same paperwork over and over. So if there's a way to make that a seamless opportunity where people will be able to get those services through online or even through the phone, that would be super helpful to, I think, people like myself here in New York City. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for your voice and leadership. We New York State residents have the extreme honor of having one of the greatest champions of anti-hunger work in the United States Senate representing us. She also is a member of the Senate Agriculture Committee. Anything hungry people in New York have ever needed, Senator Gillibrand has been there for them. And so we're so honored she's here with us today. Take it away, Senator.
Thank you, Joel. Am I muted? No, good, okay. Thank you, Joel. I really appreciate everyone for being on this call. I want to thank Hunger Free America for not only bringing us together, but also to help create this call to action, to draw attention to the rising rates of hunger in America and the real crippling circumstances that so many families in New York are under and across the country. Since the pandemic started, I have visited food banks and food pantries all across our state, from the ones in upstate New York that have cars around the block to the ones in Bronx or in Brooklyn or in Queens where the lines stretch around the block with people standing as opposed to cars. The real reality is that at every one of these places, the line of people has been, and the line of cars has stretched longer and farther than ever before in the history of these food banks. And New York's not alone. Nationwide, 1 in 5 parents does not have enough food to feed their kids. And 1 in 4 houses is food insecure. So we are in the middle of a crisis. Tomorrow, Thanksgiving, families across New York and across the country will actually go hungry. But instead of providing them with the support that they need and the resources that they need, Senator McConnell in the US Senate has put the Senate in recess and walked away from this problem. These families do not have any other option. They don't have the ability to walk away from their challenges, and they can't decide to find the money to pay for tonight's dinner sometime next month or next year. So food banks and groups like Hunger Free America have been going above and beyond to help advocate for families, but they can't and they shouldn't, be asked to meet the rising demand alone. So really, it's up to Congress to act. Do you know what that sound is? For it.
Dana, is there sounds that you're, okay, sorry about that, Senator.
Okay, so I keep going. Okay.
Yes.
So for me, expanding SNAP is one of the best things we can do to address hunger in the country. In New York, before the pandemic, 1 in 8 rural families and 1 in 7 families in metro areas relied on SNAP to purchase food. The need for assistance has grown dramatically over the last several months, and the program has not received the resources that it needs to meet that demand. The House Relief Bill, the HEROES Act, that was passed in May, would temporarily raise SNAP maximum benefits by 15%. That same expansion must be included in the Senate's relief package so that it can help families afford to put food on the table. I also introduced legislation that would provide $8 billion of grant funding to food banks and other food access networks so they can meet the rising demand by purchasing fresh fruits and vegetables directly from farmers whose typical clients and customers, like restaurants and event spaces, have had to close their door and had to cancel all their orders. So as the end of this year approaches, so does the expiration of many of the safety net programs that Congress passed in the spring, like pandemic unemployment assistance, pandemic emergency unemployment compensation, the federal eviction moratorium, the student loan forbearance. All of those programs are ending at the end of the year. So those programs have been the lifeline for a lot of struggling families. So these fast approaching deadlines and the growing need for support, it's really an outrage that my Republican colleagues have been unwilling to come to the table to address these issues. Helping families overcome hunger and poverty should never be a partisan issue. Hunger Free America's polling shows it's not a partisan issue for the American people. So this has to stay our top priority when we are back in session, and I will fight to make sure that it is.
Thank you so much, Senator. Thank you again for all your leadership, and thank you for your amazing staff. And same to Congressman Morelle, who I'm about to introduce. Smart, competent, secure people get excellent people around them, knowing that makes them even better. So thank you, Senator. And Congressman Morelle is one of the great, he was in the New York State Assembly for many years, one of the great champions of anti-poverty work in the State Assembly. He's relatively new to the US House and has already become one of the great champions working on these issues in the House. He represents Rochester and surrounding areas and upstate central New York, depending on your definition. So we're honored to have Congressman Morelle here.
Good afternoon, and I want to start by thanking Joel Berg and Nicole, who did a lot of the work to organize this, and everyone at Hunger Free America for not only hosting this, but for the extraordinary work they do in New York City, around the state, and around the country. They are truly national leaders, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with them and the opportunity to call them friends. I also want to thank my friend and colleague, Senator Gillibrand, who's just extraordinary. We get to work on so many important issues. I also want to thank the many advocates and partners who are working together and today are highlighting this critical issue. I would be remiss if you'll permit me just a personal point to say hello and to thank my great friend, Joanne Simon, who I had the privilege of serving with. She's a great member from Kings County and a dear friend, and it's great to be with her, and Councilman Levin, who I've known for many years. And I'm not going to lie, I'm really excited to be on any kind of panel with Chef Colicchio. We have a lot of Colicchios in Rochester, so you might want to come visit your long lost cousin, Chef, sometime. We'd love to host you. But I want to, just expand a little bit on what Senator Gillibrand said about tomorrow being Thanksgiving. From big families, and I come from a big Italian family, you'll have extravagant meals on Thanksgiving. But for millions of families here in New York and across our country, it will just be another day that they go hungry. The report conducted by Hunger Free America makes clear in very stark numbers what we've known for months, that the COVID pandemic has severely exacerbated our nation's hunger crisis, shining a grim light on just how fragile food accessibility is. And I do want to thank my friend Julia Tedesco. I'm privileged to work with FoodLink in upstate New York. There's none better, and she's an amazing champion for the work that we do. But it's important to remember, with millions of people out of work, Americans are struggling to provide for their families, force them to turn to food banks and government services. And, Yet as these families apply for a myriad of nutrition, housing, healthcare, and unemployment assistance programs, we've clearly seen the barriers put in place by administrative hurdles that people too often are the cause for preventing them from accessing those critical benefits that they need, and which right now they demand even more. So that's why I'm fighting with Senator Gillibrand and other colleagues to enact legislation that would streamline these services and eliminate the barriers that hold people back from receiving resources and benefits they need. And you see some of the statistics on people who are eligible but don't receive benefits. 55% of the people over the age of 60 years who are eligible for programs like SNAP don't receive them. It's an extraordinary number. And our legislation, the HOPE Act, would change how we approach, apply for, and distribute benefits to eligible Americans during a time when they need it the most. By utilizing new technologies to coordinate across multiple government agencies, we could allow people to more easily access and monitor their benefits while creating personal plans that would allow them to be empowered to achieve growth and economic stability. This is something I'm very, very involved in back home. Julie and I work on a project very similar to this. And when Joel and I talked about it a few years ago, to me, this is exactly what we need to do. Government services are supposed to do just that, serve the public. And yet too many people are struggling and forced to navigate a very complex, difficult, bureaucratic system to receive assistance. So especially now, we need to take every step possible to uplift families during their time of need and ensure no one in America is left behind. In addition to the HOPE Act, I've been working alongside Senator Gillibrand and others, partners in the House, to expand SNAP benefits, strengthen school nutrition programs, bolster emergency meal options, and more. There's so much work that needs to be done, but we must begin to identify solutions and work. And I couldn't be more excited about the Biden administration coming in. As Joel said, I think it'll be a whole fresh approach to how we deal with these issues. So again, thank you to all of you on the call for the extraordinary work you do. I'm so proud to be a partner with all of you. And hopefully next year at Thanksgiving, when the pandemic is behind us, we will have enacted legislation and programs which really uplift millions of American families. Joel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. You know, every Feeding America food bank does amazing work filling in the gaps and feeding our lowest income neighbors. But the very best food banks in America are always innovating on programs and also speaking out on policy. And FoodLink really is one of the very best food banks in America. So it's really my honor to introduce Julia Tedesco, who's the president and CEO of FoodLink Food Bank based in Rochester.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for the kind words, and to your team for organizing this. And a very special thank you and sincere thank you to Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Morelle for all of the constant support they have provided to FoodLink and to our community. And it's a privilege to call Congressman Morelle a friend. Thank you. It's been 256 days since the first case of COVID-19 in our region here in the greater Rochester Finger Lakes area of the state. In that time, FoodLink has distributed 19 million pounds of food, organized 380 drive-through community food distributions, and prepared more than 650,000 healthy meals for children in Rochester. All of this in addition to the work that our network of food pantries, meal programs, and other nonprofits are doing to ensure that no one goes hungry. The demand for our work and for the work of the other 9 food banks across New York State has surged by 40 to 50% since March. All of us have rapidly evolved our distribution methods to meet the needs of this moment, but our collective response comes nowhere near the federal government's ability to provide a true safety net. For every 1 meal a food bank in the nation provides, SNAP can provide close to 9. Charities will never be able to provide this level of assistance that SNAP has the potential to. Hunger is one symptom of the structural barriers that keep folks living in chronic poverty. The HOPE Act, legislation proposed by Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Morelle, aims to significantly reduce these barriers by allowing multiple online applications for assistance and streamlining how eligible recipients access services to reduce food insecurity and other issues. Time is a limited commodity for everyone, but especially for the poor. By leveraging collaboration, common sense, and technology, the HOPE Act honors the dignity of those living in poverty. I want to again thank Joel and his team for organizing this, and thank Senator Gillibrand and Morelle for all that they do. Pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Julia. Tom Colicchio wears many hats beyond the chef's hat. You know him from, a TV host, a restaurateur running small, businesses, and a longtime passionate food activist. He's also an activist now for independent restaurants. And Tom, as you know, Hunger Free America strongly supports your fight to get Congress to pass an independent restaurant stabilization fund for the small businesses, for all your workers. We think that's really vital, and that is part of our comprehensive recommendations to Congress and to the new administration. So with that, I introduce my friend and colleague, Tom Colicchio. You're on mute.
Joel, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for the work that you're doing at Hunger Free America, and also for being my mentor when it comes to issues of hunger, especially hunger in America. So thank you, and thank you to all the other panelists. I had some remarks that I prepared, but I'm gonna kind of push that aside. I watch the nightly news every night, and we see stories of 54 million who are struggling to feed their families. 24 million Americans who said they didn't get enough to eat this week. Children who are going to bed hungry. Seniors who have to choose between medication and food. And we see these images of cars lined up 3 hours, 4 hours long, and people just lining up to get food. And we look at this, and if this was the news and we saw this and this was another country, what would we think of that country? What do we tell our children who are watching that news? We say we should help that country? We would certainly feel that there is a lack of leadership in that country. We may feel empathy for them. This is America. This is where it's happening. It's not a third world country. These are our neighbors, family members that are hiding it from us. These are Americans that are going to bed hungry every night. These are American children who are struggling. American parents who have to make a decision between feeding themselves and feeding their children. We could do better. And so we're going to see images tomorrow of people giving out turkeys and taking care of people, and that's great. That's great that so many people feel a need to help. But keep in mind, those people that you're helping tomorrow, they will be hungry the next day, and they will be hungry the next day. And the only way to end hunger, and let's start talking about ending hunger in this country, not about managing anymore. Let's talk about ending hunger. We can do that through smart policy. All the policies that Senator Gillibrand is talking about, that Congressman Morelle is talking about, all these great policies, we can solve this problem. And I'm hopeful. I am hopeful. There is the Thanksgiving, it's the holiday season, and I do have hope. And this is where my hope comes from. These lines that we see, these 3 hour long lines, these are people in their cars. These are people that were solidly middle class, maybe even upper middle class 8 months ago. Never did they think that they were going to have to line up for food. Never in a million years did it occur to them. And so all of these things that we sort of put on poor people, no one asked to be born into poverty. And all these things that we put on, they're lazy, they deserve it, they've made bad decisions. Well, maybe now a lot of people who are solidly middle class are going to look and say, you know what? Maybe it's not a bad decision. Maybe things happen that you have no control over. And I'm hoping, and especially with this new administration and with Joe Biden, I'm hoping that we have a greater sense of empathy. And that empathy will actually make us gather together and enact these laws to create stronger safety nets, to take care of the most vulnerable Americans in our country. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving again, Joel. Thank you for having me join this panel, and to all the other panelists, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. As a Central Brooklynite, I am honored to be having two great elected officials whose district I actually live in. I'll get to the second in a minute, but first want to introduce Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, who was one of the lead sponsors of a bill to increase school breakfast participation statewide in New York, and has just been another great champion of our issues. Assemblywoman.
Thank you, Joel. I want to thank you and Hunger Free America, your entire team, for all the work and these surveys to examine hunger and poverty and highlight, practical and really targeted solutions that can make a difference in people's lives. And I want to thank, obviously, Senator Gillibrand and my good friend, Congressman Morelle, for your great work and coming up with the HOPE Act, which is like an incredible piece of legislation. I'm very excited to support it, and it's so needed. COVID has exacerbated so many social justice inequities that already existed. And as Mr. Colicchio just said, people who didn't see those things before, who didn't experience those inequities before, now are all of a sudden confronting them. And in my district, certainly we've had unprecedented calls for help with unemployment, food insecurity, and housing insecurity. And while our eviction moratorium has helped, it needs to be extended because food insecurity is not helped by losing one's home. So I'm very grateful that New York's programs have really stepped up to help their neighbors, and that New York has taken some really solid measures to help get people food and SNAP during the pandemic. But it really is unconscionable that so many children and adults are living in poverty in Brooklyn and across the country, and that have to choose between their basic needs and food. So, New York really needs to step up further. We need to raise revenue. And of course, we need massive federal intervention in terms of funds. And I'm really going to be relying on our strong advocates in Washington to ensure that the state gets the funds it needs so that it can take care of its people. And again, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I think it's so important that we realize that our neighbors may not have the Thanksgiving that we will have. We have to be there for them on Thanksgiving and every day afterwards. And I'm looking forward to taking on that challenge with all of you. And thanks again, Joel and Hunger Free America, for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Simon. A lot of people give credit to the people who work and volunteer at soup kitchens and food pantries as hunger heroes this time of year, and they certainly are. But I think the greatest undercredited hunger heroes in New York and America are the state employees, are the county employees, and the city employees who've been working overtime to help people get SNAP benefits and pandemic EBT benefits and grab-and-go meals. And so it's really an honor to introduce Stephen Banks. He's the Commissioner of the Department of Social Services of the City of New York, and he and his team have really done a miraculous job getting people food in this crisis. Commissioner?
Thank you very much, Joel. I appreciate the praise, and I appreciate, most importantly, the praise for our frontline workers who have done so much over the last 8 months to provide benefits to people under these extraordinary circumstances. But I also want to thank Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Morelle for your federal leadership that has been so important. If we did not have the ability to provide SNAP and food stamp benefits online, we would have been in a situation in which people were going to have to choose between their health and getting food assistance. But because of the waivers that we got before the pandemic hit, clients have been able to get benefits online, telephone interviews. We got waivers during the pandemic to enable us to take applications over the phone. And that's resulted in the ability to manage a historic increase in SNAP applications. It's detailed in the terrific Hunger Free America report. And we've increased the caseload by 15% in order to meet this need. But what our clients know is what Hunger Free America documents so well, which is that the benefits don't last for the whole month. And that is why so many of our clients who receive SNAP benefits by the end of the month then must go to a food pantry. And with the kind of leadership that Senator you and Congressman Morelle have demonstrated, I have great hope that in the next session, we will address the problem of being able to deliver the food stamp benefits that our clients are entitled to, but those benefits do not go far enough. And what's so critical, to amplify what Tom said, for every dollar that we get in SNAP benefits, it contributes to $1.79 in the local economy because the food that our clients buy are bought in stores. That helps contribute to the ability of jobs to be produced in our local economy. So this isn't just a question of fighting hunger by providing food stamps. It's a question of fighting hunger by enabling other people to be employed. And so I greatly appreciate your leadership. And I thank again our frontline workers for the fantastic work that they have done to make it possible for literally hundreds of thousands of additional people to get the benefits to which they're entitled.
Thank you, Commissioner. I proudly say as a New Yorker, even though our reports document that there are still massive, massive challenges facing the city and still a lot of people unfortunately falling through the cracks, the city of New York has done a better job in responding to the food crisis than any big city in the United States. And that's part of your leadership and the mayor's leadership, and also Kate Mackenzie, who heads up food policy for the city. So I just want to thank you for all that work, and take it away, Kate.
Thanks so much, Joel. Thank you to your team. I really want to appreciate the words from Natosha. Your lived experiences as a Food Advisory Action Board member are so needed in these moments. Certainly, Senator Gillibrand and Senator Morelle from all levels of government, your leadership is exemplary. You know, the numbers in your report, Joel, are breathtaking on so many levels. And we also, that together with the more than 170 million meals that the city has helped to make available through its emergency home deliveries through Get Food NYC, as well as the number of schools that are serving meals. Even now that schools are closed, they are open for meals. We've been able to ensure that students and their families, those who are kosher and halal observant, meals are available for them. But while that's true, and while we will do absolutely everything that we can to ensure that no New Yorker goes hungry, that our food pantries are as stocked as they absolutely can be, that we're getting benefits into the hands of people who are eligible for them, we know that that's not going to fix food insecurity. We need living wages in this city. We need to be able to ensure that the root of food insecurity is fixed at all levels. And so that we can ensure that just stocking of the shelves of our food pantries can help those that use them, but we'll be able to do so much more when we address the root causes of these problems. I also echo the appreciation and the hope that comes in January with a new administration, in particular for our immigrant communities who have been faced with unbearable fear as a result of the administration's threats to public charge. And my hope is that those communities will no longer be intimidated to realize the benefits to which they are entitled. Thank you for your partnership in all of this. I look forward to continuing to ensure that no New Yorker, no American needs to experience food insecurity in these moments, and certainly for the future moments ahead of us.
Thank you, Kate. West Side Campaign Against Hunger is one of the most innovative, effective feeding programs and social action programs in New York. They pioneered the client choice model of food pantries, so it's my honor to introduce their executive director, Gregory Silverman.
Thank you, Joel, and thanks for having me on as part of this incredible panel and highlighting the incredible research that really just highlights the strongest people in America, which are the people who are living in poverty and what they face each and every day. We feed upwards of 40,000 New Yorkers right now. And some would say it was amazing. We gave up 5,000 turkeys this year, twice as many as last year. And Elizabeth, one of our customers, came in yesterday and I spoke with her and she said, I wouldn't have had Thanksgiving without you. And thank you. And then she said, but I'm more thankful for my housing solution being fixed because of the legal support you gave. I'm more thankful for the long-term increases in SNAP that I received because of your social service workers. I'm more thankful that I'm able to use my voice to make change in my community and to give back as a volunteer with us. And I think we have to realize that. That's what we're talking about, is a turkey, like many people said. As a chef who had restaurants for many years, I love having people around the table. It's great. And that feeds people for a night. 5,000 turkeys fed 5,000 people tomorrow, and that's a beautiful thing. But people are going to be hungry for days, weeks, and months on end. And this is not new to the present federal administration, right? This has been going on for a long time. And so this is what's highlighted in Joel's and Hunger Free America's report, right? What we do at food pantries is very important in the short run, but what is done by SNAP is how we really help to push and make change to lift people up out of long-term food insecurity. You know, when we look at this, we see, you know, obviously the Biden campaign has said, as I'm quoting, hunger today isn't about scarcity, it's about a massive failure in leadership. This is a long-term failure in leadership. This isn't just 3 years and 4 years. And this is about making real change. We doubled our number of turkeys distributed. We doubled our reach of customers. We didn't double our staff. We got more efficient and we continued to be empathetic, and we stayed at 50% fresh produce. We refused to change our model to about being community, dignity, and choice focused. And what I'm saying when I say that is, like, incrementalism isn't the answer. A 15% increase to SNAP, these kind of small thinking that we have across the country, this is not going to change food insecurity in America. We have to think big. I can double my number of turkeys. I expect a doubling of SNAP for our customers. That's the kind of money they need to make real change. And so I appreciate this kind of research because it helps me go to my customers and let them know who's fighting for them and how. And I look forward to all of us coming together in the year ahead and seeing massive increases to benefits for our customers and massive decreases in people going to emergency feeding. So I thank you all and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Last but not least is New York City Councilman Stephen Levin, who is also the chair of the General Welfare Committee and one of our strongest leaders on the City Council. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Joel, and thanks to Hunger Free America. This is Albert, by the way. He woke up a little early from his nap. But I just want to thank you, Joel, for your continued leadership on these issues. I think that there's nobody that I could think of in New York City that is as consistent a champion for those in need, and I can't think of another champion who brings solutions to the table every single time we talk to you. I want to thank Natosha for the work that she's been doing, Senator Gillibrand. It's great to see Congressman Morelle, who it's been too long, but I'm glad to see him with his U.S. House lapel pin. That's great. And of course, Joanne Simon, my colleague. Gregory and Julia, thank you for the work that you were doing day in and day out, because you're out there on the ground and you're actually making it happen and putting in the hours and putting in all that time. And Tom, for your leadership is so important. One point that I would like to follow up on that Greg just made is just the how persistent this is. It's not just about one bill. It's not just about one day. This is about addressing an ongoing need it's every day. You feed a family one day, they need food the next, and so looking at that as a long-term, looking at long-term solutions has to be our objective. And sorry, and I think as the work that Steve and Kate have done over the last 8 months is just remarkable in New York. I mean, we've been hanging on by a thread. We've had to rely on donation networks, on getting more efficient, being creative with the resources that we have, and Kate and Catherine Garcia and Steve have been, it's been remarkable. It's been a remarkable achievement to stand up the Get Food NYC program as quickly and as effectively as it was done. Has kept people fed, but we're hanging on by a string, and we're facing. We had a $9 billion budget deficit this past year. We're going to be looking at another, who knows how many $1 billion deficit going into the next budget. We can't borrow. We can't borrow our way out of it. We are not authorized to borrow long-term for our expense funding. That means that we have to make cuts, or else we'll be out of compliance. We'll be out of compliance with state law. So it is so essential that with the leadership of Senator Gillibrand and Congressman Morelle and Senator Schumer and the incoming Biden administration, this has been a lifeline. That frankly, this year's election was a lifeline to New Yorkers, and I shudder to think what would have happened if it had turned the other way. Frankly, I don't mean to get political, but I just shudder to think how much worse it could be. So I'm very grateful again to the senator and the congressman for leading the charge in Washington, and Joel for your continued leadership, and whatever we could do here in the city to call attention to the needs. We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.